A sportscast, whether a 2-minute segment at the end of the nightly newscast or a standalone 30-minute affair, requires coordination and planning. In this presentation, we'll talk about how it all comes together. Not many of us love meetings, but they are necessary so we are all on the same page. It stands to reason the news director, or sports director, would lead the meeting. The assignment editor then hands out the stories to be covered. These may come from news releases, calendars and schedules, story ideas pitched by the staff, and many other places. This is also a time to brainstorm not just story ideas, but also how to approach coverage of stories and who to interview. Of course, the ultimate position we're training you for is to be a producer, and there's a whole other presentation on this position alone. This person stacks the newscast or sportscast based on the stories provided, writes the tosses to breaks into packages, and teases, which are the previews of stories to be covered to the show and the next show, and oversees all of the production. The director, just as the name suggests, directs the show. He or she blocks out the show and determines when to bring in graphics, which cameras to use and which shots to take when, and other such decisions. While the director is in charge of the control room, the floor director is in charge of the studio. This person makes sure the talent knows when to come in and on which camera, when to string out a story, and when to speed up the delivery. Generally, they are not needed to communicate from the control room to the talent because the talent will be wearing an IFB, or interruptible foldback, so the producer can speak directly to them. Think the talkback mic we use in our live productions. But if the station does not possess this technology, and we don't, the producer will talk to the floor director, and the floor director will transfer the information. The technical staff includes all of these individuals. You've seen these before, or you've even played these roles before in other classes. The point is, without them, nothing works. Now, at some stations, the director and producer are going to handle all the tech staff work in the control room, and you will have robotic cameras. But in others, you will have a full staff. The news writers are critical. This is why we stress writing skills so heavily. Yes, the producer will write a lot of the copy, as will the talent. But you also have news writers who are tracking information on the phone, taking information off the wire, and updating other stories. Of course, the reporters and anchors are the face of the newscast. All those people working in the background are there to make these folks look good. But it is impossible for the talent, the common term for reporters and anchors, to do their job without the producers, directors, tech staff, and news writers. And now it's showtime. Question: what good is it to have compelling, well-written stories that are of importance and interest to your audience and to possess outstanding actualities and picture if your newscast is so bland and jumbled the audience won't watch or listen? When you produce a newscast, you are responsible for arranging the stories so they flow and hold the audience's attention, arrange the sports and the weather within the newscast, put the commercials in place, add the open and close, all within the allotted amount of time. The first thing you need to do in ordering your newscast, of course you've teased the newscast with an exciting and energetic open, is to determine which story is going to be your lead story. This should be the one that has the most impact on your audience and will be of greatest interest. Why? Because you want to grab your audience's attention and keep them. Then you can go about stacking your show. The criteria listed here will help you determine the order and how to block the show. Here I think it is important to define a couple terms. Shows are stacked or ordered in blocks. Block 1 or A would be from the open to the first group of spots, or commercials, which is called a break. Block 2 or B would be from those spots to the next break, and so on. Then you use this ordering criteria to order the show between breaks. When we talk about variety, we mean you don't have a story about football followed by a story about basketball followed by a story of football, and so on. Keep similar sports or stories with a natural tie-in together. Tie-ins are transitions or segues from one story to another. When you hear talent say, "Speaking of basketball," or "in other news from around the NFL," that's a tie-in. You can also use a tie-in to go from one type of story to another. So you may say, "That's it for basketball, now let's talk about some wrestling," and that's another kind of tie-in. Also think geography. Naturally, if you are covering a newscast from Kansas City, you want to talk about teams in the viewing area first and then go more broad. You also want to think about audio and video. What I mean is, you don't want a group of readers followed by a group of packages. Mix it up a little bit. So you might have a couple readers about college football followed by a package, then a couple more readers, and perhaps some analysis. See what I mean? Also think about timing. You don't want a 10-minute block followed by a 2-minute block. Spread out your newscast. And finally, you'll need to write a good closing. This is at least as important as finding a good, compelling intro. Remember, you're going to be bringing a new sportscast later today, tomorrow, or next week. Tease your audience and let them know you'll have a follow-up on a key story, what you'll be covering next week, or who you'll have as a guest. Bring them back, and then do it all over again.